So it's so weird because you're New York Rick, but your name is Eric. Like that's an awkward thing for me, man. Do I call you Rick? Do I call you Eric? How are you today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Not bad, man. I've been looking forward to this space all day, so I'm doing real good right now.
I'm happy to hear that, man. I'm happy to be here. You can call me Eric. You can call me Rick. You can call me New York Rick. You can call me whatever you want, as long as you call me. Like, let's chop it up.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I really do just want to talk some MMA with you, so I don't want to make it too much of an interview. But since I got you here, I do got
Yeah,
a couple questions wrote up I'd like to hit you with.
hit
Uh,
me.
how did you meet Ariel Hawani?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. That goes back over a decade now. So, I was a kid, just kind of, a few years out of college, kind of with no real direction in life. I knew I wanted to get into the marketplace and work, and I was ready to work hard, but I didn't really have like a game plan. And I got a marketing degree. And so when I started applying for all these marketing jobs, what I thought I was going to be was like some Don Draper esque Mad Men advertising executive in a suit in a corner office and making tons of money and drinking, vodka at noon. And what I was met with in the job market was a lot of like door to door sales or cold calling and all this stuff that I wasn't particularly interested in. So I kind of decided at that point to make a little bit of a pivot and try to get into media. And I started an internship at a blog called Gawker, who at the time was covering television and sports through Deadspin and a lot of different things. And I did an internship there. And when the internship was coming to an end, I thought to myself, what do I really actually like want to do? What am I interested in? And at the time, it was just MMA. Like MMA was the thing that was on my mind all the time. Even when I was at work, I was thinking about MMA. And I sent Ariel an email. I just found his email, and it happened to be like an old email of his on his old website, jerrypark.com, that redirected to his current email. And I took a shot and just said, hey, basically, at the time, what was I? Probably like 25, 26. I'm a 25, 26-year-old man who loves MMA, who lives in New York. I know you do the MMA hour out of New York, and I'd love to just like meet you, work with you. I'll get you coffee. I'll do whatever it takes. So I sent this email with no expectation that it would turn into anything. Maybe an hour later, I got a reply from Ariel just saying like, "Hey man, we might need some people who know some stuff about MMA because AOL just sold MMA fighting to Vox Media, and we're kind of building this thing from the ground up now. We have to, start the show from Vox, and we need some people." So I interviewed with Chad Mum, who is the man who gave me my first break, who's I believe a VP at Vox now, over a decade later. And I started as an intern there. So I went from one internship to another internship. At that time, I was young. I was living at home, and all I really wanted to do was grind and make my living, but do it in a space that I really wanted to work in. So I got an opportunity there, and I started as an intern. I helped build the original studio that, if you're a longtime fan of the show, I helped build that original studio that Mayhem Miller trashed and walked out of. And then from there, I just kind of kept my relationship going with Ariel. I started doing some full time work in public relations at the same time because MMA wasn't paying the bills. It was just something I really loved to do, and the show was just an escape from the other parts of the job market that were less fun for me. And so I kept building it up. I kept getting more opportunities. I was on the shows. Now all of a sudden, Ariel is saying, "Hey, I want you to kind of speak on the mic." One thing leads to another. Now the video elements coming in, and it just turned into something where it's been a relationship that's lasted over a decade. I owe my entire MMA career, as it is, to Ariel Helwani and the opportunity that he and Vox at the time gave me. There was a little bit of a departure there to ESPN, and now we're back at Vox. But yeah, it truly all started with one email to Ariel Helwani, who responded within an hour, and was ready and willing to give somebody who just needed a shot, an opportunity. So I know that's not a story that like everybody can follow. I know it's not something, if I just say, yeah, you just have to send one email and go out there and you'll get what you need and you'll be in the MMA space. it's not real for everybody. The timing, the luck, all of it is very, very important to that story. But I will say the thing that I try to tell people all the time, and it's reflected in my life, is just take the chance, because the worst somebody's going to say is no. So put yourself out there. Say, hey, this is my story. This is what I do. I'm looking for an opportunity. If they don't reply, then you just move on to the next one. But I truly believe in taking those types of opportunities and putting yourself out there if you're passionate about something.
So, full disclaimer, I knew a little bit of that story because I knew about the. I've been listening, man. I've been listening to the MMA hour longer than I know. Like, you ever try to look back and you're like, how long have I been? And you really can't figure it out. Like, that's how long I've been listening to the MMA hour. I remember when Mayhem went ape shit. So, like,
I I carried the plexiglass, so we had the little small studio. It was absolutely tiny. It was the size of a broom closet where Mayhem and Ariel were squeezed into. And on the other side of the camera from that was a little booth with a mixer and little recording devices. And I carried the plexiglass that separated those two rooms on the subway in New York City. And when I got to, I'm talking like this is like a 7 foot by 5 foot piece of plexiglass. When I got to the Vox office back with it, they were like, "Are you effing crazy? Like, why did you not take a taxi?" I was so green. I was so new to the corporate world. I had no experience with that I was just willing to do anything it took. And at that time, I thought the best idea was, let me save them a cab ride and just use my subway fare, which was probably like $2 at the time, to get this plexiglass back to the studio. But yeah, I was grinding. I was hustling. And those days were fun, but I definitely am more comfortable in my life where I'm at now.
did he break the plexiglass?
No, he. You know what's funny about that story is I think, and I might have told this. I don't know if I've ever told this. Maybe I have, but if not, some exclusive for you. I spoke to him before he went into the studio, into the interview with Ariel. So he took a taxi, unlike my stupid ass at that time. He took a taxi and pulled up to the studio, and he looks me dead in the eyes, and he's like, "From this moment on, I'm not Mayhem Miller anymore. I'm Lucky Patrick." And kind of like smiled and laughed at me. And he was fully like cognizant, present. He knew exactly what he was doing. And from that moment on, he walked into the studio and he was Lucky Patrick. And then we got that moment on air with him and Ariel. But it was a little bit sobering. It was a little bit interesting because I knew that there was a moment before the interview where he just flipped that switch. He just decided he was this new character. And then it went off the rails. But there was a moment before where he was Mayhem and he was smiling and he was laughing and he was goofy. And then yeah, and now I've told Ariel this many years removed, but he did kind of swear me to secrecy at the time. But I feel like the expiration date on that's come and gone. So I held on to that for a while, even not telling Ariel for a while. But yeah, Mayhem flipped that switch right before he came on the show.
Oh man, he knew what he was going to do before he got there.
Yeah, yeah.
Real quick before I dig into any fights, because can you explain to me Vox Media, SB Nation? Like, what
Sure.
is it the same thing, or is one the publication and one the? Can you explain it to me, please?
Yeah, no problem. So I work directly for MMA fighting. There's a few branches to this. So I'll start at the bottom and then we'll go up. So the MMA Hour is a show that is on MMA fighting. MMA fighting being the website that hopefully everybody goes to and visits. It's a great website, and that provides MMA news, and that show is part of it. MMA fighting is a division of SB Nation, which is a larger blog network that includes MMA fighting, but also includes MMA Mania, formerly included Bloody Elbow, but no longer includes Bloody Elbow, as well as many other like local sports blogs. At the time that it was coming up, it was like a competitor to Bleacher Report, where you're getting local, very custom specific coverage of the different teams or topics that you love. And so they've still got tons of different individual like football team blogs, as well as basketball, baseball, and many other sports. There's less MMA, obviously, because the sports are larger across the space. But we are MMA fighting is one of the bigger properties under the SB Nation umbrella. So that is up to that level, and then above that is Vox Media, which is another umbrella that has SB Nation in its portfolio, but also has a bunch of other companies, including like The Verge and Vox.com, and Pop Sugar and the dodo. If anybody on here loves like cute animals, I'm sure you've seen the dodo or follow the dodo. Who doesn't? And so that's how that all works. It goes from MMA fighting up to SB Nation up to Vox.
Okay, that's pretty much how my understanding was. And we all know you're a producer and a social media manager, but if you had to tell your great grandfather in two sentences what you do for a living, what would you say to him?
Oh man, that is a very interesting question. If I had to tell my great grandfather what I do for a living, what would I say? Um, I do what I love, honestly. Like I think I every single day I get to work in a sport that I never thought I'd get an opportunity in. Like before I sent that email to Ariel, I was deep, deep, deep into the process of becoming an NYPD officer. Like I was in a recruiting class that was just about to get called, and I was about to go to academy. I had passed all the other stuff, mental, physical stuff, and I was going to go down a path where there was going to be steady job security, benefits, all these things, and I put that to the side to take a very, very low paying internship at the time because I was passionate about MMA. And there's days that it feels like a job, certainly, and I think anybody here who works for a living can identify with, like, yeah, sometimes the job feels like the job, but when I get home and lay my head on the pillow at night, I can say that I get to work in a sport that I love dearly and has provided me so many opportunities and has great fans and has great fighters. It's just like I feel truly thankful to be doing what I'm doing. So yeah, like it's not very specific, and maybe my great grandfather might ask for some more specificity, but that's probably how I'd summarize it best. Is like, man,
That's
I
the
just
win-
get to do what I love.
that's the winning answer, brother. That's the winning answer. Why New York Rick, not New York Eric?
Yeah, that's a good question. My friends who know me best always called me Rick. My formal government name is definitely Eric, and I definitely go by that. I don't like go by Rick when I write anything on like forums or anything like that. But all my closest friends growing up just called me Rick. They just shortened it. I don't know why. It's not that much shorter, but they've always called me Rick. And then I just decided at some point, it was early in the MMA hour, that like I love my New York roots. I rep New York through and through, and it sounded close enough to New York Knicks that maybe there's a little bit of close enough association or rhyming. And I just said here, New York Rick, and it stuck, and it's stuck since. But yeah, my close friends have always called me that. It's one of those things. I feel like you can't give yourself a nickname. You have to like go with what people call you. And I've been Rick since I was a kid. All my friends have always called me that.
You should hear the things we call each other in our chat room. So, you and Frank were on Bobby Green this past weekend, huh?
I will not take any credit for that. It was definitely Frank. I'm not going to even try to commandeer that ship and pretend that I was a believer. I was willing to ride with Frank because he seemed very confident and loves Bobby Green, but that was all Frankie. That was all mysterious Frank. And I will say I did have some vibes. I did an interview with my friend Matthias Burbell, who's awesome and has a great radio show. And before the fight, I was getting the vibes with this fight that reminded me of um, Cowboy Cerrone versus Alexander Hernandez, where this young dude that everybody kind of was like crowning as the next big thing, he had just come off, I think it was the OAM win, and it seemed like, okay, this young lion is going to put this old lion out to pasture and take him out. And he was talking all this shit. I'm going to retire you. I'm going to kill you. And when they got in the cage, Cowboy just taught him a lesson. And I started getting those vibes. And I don't think it was necessarily the same thing where I thought Grant Dawson was like disrespectful or too cocky or took his eye off the ball. But I just wasn't sure that like when you're fighting at this level, there's something different. And Bobby Green has been in those main events for his entire life, and Grant Dawson hasn't. Just quite frankly, now don't get me wrong. Some of the names on Grant Dawson's resume are great, and I would say even some that like are potentially better wins than Bobby Green is. But it just felt like it felt like there was something in the air where like Bobby Green was being a little bit overlooked. The line was a little bit off. And he turned back the clock for one night and showed that like, that veteran experience does matter. And I think we forget that sometimes because we're used to the young lions kind of taking out the old lions these days. It's a tried and true story in MMA. It's a tried and true story in the UFC. But Bobby Green showed he still has something left, and there's a lot of fun fights for him left. And on the other side of it, Grant Dawson's going to be fine. Like Grant Dawson's going to bounce back and still be a great prospect and be at that Shark Tank at lightweight. And I'm excited for both their paths. Honestly, I think it created two more interesting paths than if Grant Dawson just came in there and absolutely like smoked them.
Yeah. So,
Shout out to my
everything
boy Robbie Lawler for bucking the trend on that retiring the
Yeah,
old line. Shout out to my
big
boy. I
time.
catched that. Loved it.
That's one of the best ones in recent memory. If that's not one of the like knockout of the year contenders, nothing is. That was a special moment.
that's got to be knockout of the decade for hardcore fans. Like that's got to be for guys that have been with it for Robbie Law,
Yeah.
even half of Robbie Law.
Dude, for somebody that's watched Robbie Lawler as long as I have, since I was probably 12, 13, like so going on 17 years, something like that. Like I remember the Diaz Robbie fight was one of the first fights I ever saw, the original one. And like it was such a feel good moment for him, man. Like just to see he still had it and went out on top and didn't get brutalized like some of these guys do. So it was a real nice change of pace for me.
Yeah, we really don't get a ton of those, and it was really nice to see. I will say that.
Yeah, I will say this. Everything we do here is recorded, so we can't lie about it later. Everybody that you see on the speaker was on Bobby Green last week. No one called 32-second knockout. That would be a lie. But we were all on Bobby Green. Andrew is our host. One of us got to take the On Topic account, and I'm in the Midwest, and our internet sucks. So Andrew's on the host account. Andrew, what you got, bud?
So full disclosure, I definitely did not have Bobby Green. I didn't bet that fight, but I said that line was way too wide. That's why I couldn't touch it. I did favor Dawson, but props to Bobby Green. Eric, I've got to ask, man. I know you guys are sponsored by DraftKings, and I don't know if you're like allowed to answer this or not. But do you gamble for real? Like, the picks that are put on, or is that something that you kind of just have to do to fulfill that contractual obligation? Is that something you take serious, or is that just something you do on the side for fun? Like how does that work?
Yeah, that's a completely fair question, and I can't answer it to this degree. So, um, Connor hands out his picks every single week, and he's doing tons and tons of research, watching tons and tons of tape, and really giving out winners. If you've been riding with him, like he came out super super hot in 2022, had a little bit of a stumble at the start of 2023, but has already dug himself completely out of that hole and is now looking at 100 total units over the last less than 2 years. So yeah, he's an absolute monster. I say that all to say basically like he's taking all those bets, he's posting his slips, and is doing that for real. We're under no obligation by DraftKings at all to make any wagers. That's just a betting segment that is sponsorship of the show. As far as my own betting proclivities and what I do take the Parlay Pals bet just for solidarity to ride with it. Nothing major. But when it comes to my own betting, back in the day, I used to do a thing called Rick's Picks where I would like really be hard and studying tape and knew the ins and outs, and I felt like I had a little bit of an edge. And the lines were a little bit softer at that time. I'm talking now like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. The lines were really soft, and you could really find some value. I was a pretty frequent better at that time. Now, in this more modern era, I'm much more of a sniper. I'm a little bit more selective. I look for underdog value or like let's say minus 150 or better singles. I really don't love parlays. I don't like the fortunes being risked on two different opportunities. If I'm going to do a parlay, I'll just do a manual parlay where I'll take the first leg and put some of it or all of it on the second leg. I'm more of a big fan of just hunting for individual lines that I really, really like. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss, but I'm pretty comfortable operating that way. So yeah, that's how that goes. But it's definitely not DraftKings motivated in any capacity. It's a completely separate thing. They're just there to sponsor the show.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Anybody that wants on, just throw your hand up. Nick, Rich, I seen that you had your hand up, but I didn't want you to interrupt Eric, because we didn't, I just don't know who you are, brother. If you send the request out, just throw the hand up, and I'll make sure you get a chance to get on the mic here. So a little more of a in-depth question that, like, a guy. So, like, listen, we don't aspire to necessarily be reporters or anything around here. We're super diehard fans, and we love MMA. I have done, like, in these spaces, I have done some very deep dives, in-depth pieces on several subjects, including Ali Abdelaziz. And over the past few days, because of Bellator 300, James Lynch has been in the news saying that Ali using bully tactics, making it hard for him to interview people, not allowing him to do interviews. As a longtime MMA hour guy, I always assume, and I'm from Michigan. I live in Dearborn. I don't know what you know about that. It's a very large Arab community, and I just kind of understand a lot about the Arab community. So, with that simplified, even though it's not, I always just thought that maybe there were some belief differences between Ali and Ariel. So, like, Ali was just, shaded Ariel and wouldn't give him the interviews. But now it seems like he's just fully selective. Like, how prevalent of an issue is that for a guy like in your position? Like, and I'm not asking for dirt. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just asking, like, how big of a problem is this really?
Yeah, in my position, it's not because, like, Ariel books the show. Ariel's the one with the relationships. Ariel's the one, and I think, if there's anything anybody can take away from Ariel Helwani, I think a lot of people look to the, like, yeah, he's a great interviewer and he sits down with the people. That he is, and don't get me wrong, that is a very, very important part of the mix. But more than that, he's a relationship cultivator. He stays in touch with people. He is constantly communicating with people, and building those relationships is how you get people to feel comfortable and to want to be on the show and all those things. And that's the much, much more important part. And there was a time where Ali and Ariel had a very strong relationship in that regard. Habib, like, I remember this clearly. Ariel's talked about this many times. I remember when Habib was constantly getting injured, and there was opportunities for everybody to start piling on Habib, and Ariel would have him on the show to talk about, what's coming ahead and what's up next. And it felt like the world was against Habib, and Ariel would have him on the show, and the feedback would be like, we don't want to hear from this pullout merchant. This guy's always hurt, blah, blah, blah. It feels like a far cry from that now because of what Habib was able to do. But that was real. And there was times where Habib was not in favor, and Ariel was having him on the show to kind of keep those relationships and make sure that he's, covering the sport in as wide a way as he could. And then it soured, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, these opportunities that we had at the time and keeping Habib's name relevant are now, no longer reciprocated. And now we can't talk to Habib and all those things. Now that I say that to say, like, that's a Ariel and Ali thing, right? Like, in my position, like, I'm just there for the show, and I support the show and Ariel however we can. But he has to deal with these types of relationship issues as he has with Ali. And James Lynch is the same, right? Like, James Lynch had a relationship with Ali. Now it has been fractured in some way. I'm not as versed in how that is, but I did see that video that he posted. And now the relationship is different to the point where Ali is, like, trying to limit his access to the fighters. I can appreciate James's take on that, where he said basically like, I'm not trying to give you additional access or coverage, so don't worry about it. Like that's not what I was trying to do anyway, which I can appreciate and understand. Everybody's different and is going to handle it a different way. It can be difficult if you are somebody who relies on that, right? And I think that that's what Ali is trying to do in this scenario. Is he's trying to limit the access to athletes that, and let's call it what it is. He has a very good stable of athletes, and they're people who are relevant in the MMA space and people will want to talk to. He's kind of trying to limit the access to that and cut off some access to a decent number of athletes that are great and people will want to speak to. But there are other athletes, and that's just the reality of the situation. So for Ariel has relationships with many other people and can speak to other people. So can James Lynch, and so can anybody in that scenario. It's unfortunate. I wish that this was not the way it was done. I don't necessarily agree with the tactics here, but I don't think it's as debilitating as perhaps Ali and others might hope or think that it is. And quite frankly, like I hope to see a day where they just mend the fences. And I don't think it's like an unovercomable obstacle. I don't even think that's an actual word, but I don't think that bridge can't be crossed and that fence can't be mended. And one day things are different, but for now they're not. And life goes on. The MMA Hour and Ariel Helwani continue to talk to other people. Ali continues to represent his fighters, and it's just separate at the moment. And same situation with James Lynch there. So yeah, there's different ways to approach it. I think James has chosen his path, and I wish him good luck in that scenario. And Ali is also choosing, a path and deciding how he's going to operate. So yeah, it doesn't impact the show beyond, some people are not going to come on. Then there's the rare instances where you have somebody like Kayla Harrison, who is an Ali client, but says, you know what, I want to go and talk to Ariel, and it works, and it's fine. And so, there's all different kinds of like shades and colors in this story, but the people like the drama of it. But I'll be honest, like it's really pretty drama free. It's just, hey, like Ali's clients don't come on the MMA Hour except for the few that kind of buck that trend, like a Kayla Harrison, and life goes on. And Ariel talks to other people, and Ali has his fighters talk to other people.
Yeah, I mean, we've had probably a dozen fighters in here. I've never had any issue, and like I don't know, we're not getting world champions in here and stuff. But I remember watching Tatiana Suarez and Patchy Mix interview, and Patchy wouldn't even come on the camera, and I'm just like, that's so awkward. Like I don't know, it just gets to a point where like I feel like I know they're fighters, and I actually, we go out of our way to try to be respectful when we have these spaces, but like to some degree professionalism should come first, and like when the highest level of interviewing knows that you're there, like I just, whatever, I'm not asking for dirt, so I'm gonna move on. Zah Betts had his hands up and had to leave. I know he wanted to ask a question. Zah, what do you got, bud?
Zah, can you say that again? I couldn't quite hear you.
My fault. I just connected to my car, but how you guys doing?
We're doing good, man. What's up?
All right. My question is, what's your thoughts on the Saudi taking over with the Bellator?
When you say that, I think you're referring to like PFL getting Saudi money and potentially PFL purchasing Bellator. And in regard to that, like, yeah, it's an interesting time in MMA. I think the Saudi thing is not going to go away, and that's across all sports. But MMA is ripe for it. Like it seems like obviously the biggest boxing fights are happening in the kingdom at the moment, and it seems like PFL's new investment is going to have some impact on their ability to do business, especially if now that gives them the ability to potentially either merge with or acquire Bellator. It's interesting. I don't know yet. I don't know what to make of it yet, because what I think we need to see is what is the influence, right? Like what changes from a business perspective, what changes in terms of card construction. Are all of a sudden we going to see different types of events because of the Saudi influence? Is it just money? Is it just that they are funding the operation in the interest of having events in Saudi Arabia, which has been the case lately? So it's a little bit early for me to say, but the impact immediately that we can see is if PFL now has additional cash and funds and is going to use it to build out a more impressive roster through acquisition of Bellator or even through other means like signing athletes like Francis Ngannou outright. It's going to be an interesting consideration if they can be a competitor to the UFC on that talent basis. Because I think, you know, the way that you compete is always going to be on the basis of talent. You can do something different and do a tournament, or you can say we're Bellator and we do this, or we're PFL and we do this, or we're one and we do this. At the end of the day, the fighters are the product and the fighters are what's going to allow you to compete. So if PFL can continue to grow their roster, whether it be through acquisition or just outright signings of very talented fighters, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I think a little early, if I'm being honest. Like we're yet to see like really how this is going to unfold.
Yeah, I've been following closely, like, and it's not tooting the horn. The guys in here will tell you, like, as soon as Bellator's profits started getting reporting, I started telling the guys here it's all getting reported, going public because they're getting ready to be sold. Like I knew it right away. As soon as it was published what their profits were for the past several years, I came in space. I'm like, they're for sale. But I just want you to shout me out somewhere in life, somewhere big, if one slips in at the last minute and buys it, because I've been calling it for probably 5 or 6 months that they raised the same money. They're in the same bidding war. Chatri is a much smoother operator. I really think one is going to just slide in and take it.
Well, one's definitely got some big pockets as well. They've got some powerful investors and some good money. You're the first person I've heard mention one in regard to this. So if it happens, I will remember and I will give you a shout out in some capacity because I haven't heard that yet. So if it happens, you can count on it. I will definitely mention that. But yeah, I mean, I guess the more interesting discussion is like how much is Bellator worth, and what is that roster worth, and you know what is the price tag that's ultimately going to be there. I know obviously Dana White reacted to the idea of like 500 million. I couldn't imagine a world where Bellator sells for 500 million. It just does not make sense to me that the assets that they have are not worth that. They've got a decent library of fights. They've got some really strong champions, and then they've got some fighters that could probably go by the wayside if you already have a roster. So it's gonna be interesting times to see how that all shakes out. It seemed really hot for a minute, then it cooled off, then it got hot again, and now it's cooled off again. So I'm not holding my breath on any of this. I'm kind of just riding with the waves and seeing where we end up.
Yeah, I get it. We're going to talk later in here about where their fighters could land. It's a big topic. It'll be on and on. The gentleman in here named Nick Rich has had his hand up for quite some time. I want to let him get on there. Nick, go ahead.
What's going on, guys? Shalom, New York Ric. How are you?
Shalom.
So a quick question. So, when all the cameras are off, the mics are off, how is Ariel like in like real life? Like, is he like playing up like a bit on radio? He's like a germaphobe and he's sensitive about everything. It's for on air, but like in real life, what kind of person is he?
The person you see on camera is not that far from the real guy. He's pretty much the same. Obviously, there's an element once a camera turns on, like, you ham it up a little bit. There's certain things where Ariel plays it up and knows how to do the character and knows how to play it up, especially like when we're leaning into a conversation that can be interesting or divisive or something like, hey, well done steaks. Like, does he like well done steaks? Yeah, but is he going to make a big deal out of it if we're talking about it off camera? Not as much. But is he going to make a big deal out of it if he's talking to fighters who probably eat a lot of red meat and like to, talk about it and judge him for it? Like, yeah. So there's a little. It's almost like a little bit like pro wrestling, where like the real guy's an 8 and he just has to turn it up to 10 when he's doing the bit. But yeah, he is who he is, man. Like, over the years, I think he's just gotten so much more comfortable in his skin, and he's 100% the dude that he says he is. And, you know, some people are not going to believe me when I say that. Some people have a prejudgment about him. I can only speak to my experience, and he's 100% authentic. And yeah, he's exactly what he says when it comes to the idea of like trying to build camaraderie and teamwork and all those things and giving people opportunities. Like we see the characters, we see Connor and where he's come and been able to build himself on the back of the MMA Hour, and even Mysterious Frank. And then we've got guys like Alex and Joe in the control room, and our great TD Andy, who had a baby and is coming back soon. Like, it's a family kind of environment, and he fosters that, and he keeps the close people around him. And I've been around him now for a decade plus, and he's kept me around, and we've been together on this journey, and it's been awesome. So yeah, he's the salt of the earth. He's an A1. If I said a bad word about him, it would be a complete lie. And again, you know, there's some people who like him. There's some people who don't. They're going to have their own opinion of him. I can only tell you my truth, and that's what it is.
I think that you guys make a great team, by the way. But one last question, then I'm going to go. What do you think is the best interview that you've been a part of? Obviously, you've been there for every interview on the show,
man.
But if I had to pick one, what's the New York Ric hipster pick for the best interview?
I should have a hipster pick, shouldn't I? You know what's boring? Like my answer is gonna be really boring, and don't judge me for it. But like, they truly do start to like all blend together, and you start to lose track of like the big moment, the this and that. What I remember more than like one specific interview is just like people that I like, and like hearing from some of the same people over and over. And some of the ones that I've always liked that I felt like kind of got a bad shake that are now starting to like get a better shake are guys like DJ. I've always thought he was one of the best interviews. But people just like were sour on him when he was UFC champion. Like people just were sour on him. And he's gotten such a nice like kind of second life since he left the UFC. But guys like DJ, Ali Quinta, obviously a favorite and a local boy. Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is truly like one of my favorite people that we have had on the MMA Hour and continue to have. He's just an interesting character. His charisma, his cockiness, but also just like people hated how confident he was, and I never got that. I always felt like he was kind of just saying it like it was. He was confident in his abilities and should be. So yeah, I never thought that he got a fair shake, but it's guys like that who like kind of flew under the radar that I always felt like gave something really, really good to the show. But weren't as appreciated were the ones that stick in my mind. And it's weird, like the individual moments, like I honestly barely remember them. And it's not because they weren't major things or I'm not appreciative of them as they happen, but it's just been so long and there's been so much that like it just blends. Like I don't have Ariel's like photographic UFC 173 was this guy versus this guy. I don't have that. I don't have that in me.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
No problem, brother. For me, the greatest interview was James Krause. And I know that might sound like I'm trolling, but I had been saying this guy is clearly the cheat. I was in here saying this guy is clearly the cheat. If you want to figure out who's cheating, just figure out who James Krause is talking to. And then he goes on Ariel. And I remember I usually just listen. Like, I love the show because it goes in my pocket. And if I got to pause it because someone needs to talk to me, I pause it. And then I keep it in my pocket. And when James Krause was talking, I swear to you, I like went to a TV, like the World Series was on or something. I'm like, I got to see, this can't be real that and I remember just watching it and thinking, he's telling us, like, he's telling us that he's cheating. He's telling us that he's betting. And I came in here making a big deal about it. And everybody was like, yeah, I don't know. And then he got, whatever happened. And I don't wish anything bad on him. But for me, that was just, I will never forget when James Krause went on Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour and spilled the beans. I will never forget it as long as I live.
Yeah, that was definitely a memorable one. He definitely told on himself a little bit. I think at that time, like obviously the rules around the betting stuff for fighters and for coaches were not as clearly defined as they are now, right? Like certainly since then, the UFC has come out and had to do a lot of work with regulatory bodies in the betting world and making sure that they clean up that stuff. I don't think at that time we even knew like 1/100th of the extent of the operation that James Krause was kind of building at that time, and how far it went and what kind of, potentially illegal activity had occurred. But you're definitely not wrong. Like he said it all to the point where we kind of like, I think in the back we were looking at each other like, wait, did he just say that? Now I was thinking more from the perspective like, oh, people are going to be mad and think that there's some ickiness around this, and then it got way worse as the story started to develop. But that was definitely one where somebody thought that they were bragging and ended up with a little bit of egg on their face, which then turned into an avalanche. So yeah, that was definitely one.
Yeah, it was huge. Okay, so we're over 30 minutes here, so I want to be mindful of time. I got one topic here that I know Trace, the co-host, and Awaken My Inner Usman are probably going to jump on a little bit that I got to push to the front. I'll try to convince you to stick around for, I know somebody just got on the mic, but here's my hot take for you.
I love a hot take.
Hit me.
I got two
takes.
of them. I got two of them. Bananas took the money because he should have. Ashley took the money because she should have.
Oh man! All right. So for anybody who's not initiated, we're talking about the challenge, the greatest sport in the world. Like with all due respect to MMA, which I love, which is my baby. The challenge is number one because of the mix of drama and athletic achievement. And Bananas is a legend, but not the GOAT. CT's the GOAT. All right, we're gonna unpack these. Bananas took the money because he should have. Yes, Bananas has been on record and broke down why he took the money. Sarah fired the first shot, and Bananas should take the money. And also, Bananas has talked about this on his podcast. He always is thinking as a producer, what's going to make for great TV. And man, that face where he's smiling and like smirking after she's standing there praying that he doesn't take the money and he knows he's going to take the money was just some of the best TV drama that's ever happened. And Ashley, yeah, like the way Hunter treated her ass, like she didn't owe him nothing. Like that was like for him to think that after the way he treated her that she was going to give him a dime. I don't know what was going on in that dude's head. Now, could she have if she was Mother Teresa? Sure, but like if I was in that spot, I'm not giving up the money. So yeah, I agree with you. 2 for 2. Like they both should have taken that money.
So the Sarah one, I'm not gonna lie, that one kind of hit me because I always liked Sarah. Sarah was always sweet, and she was really good. She was always a good athletic competitor. So it kind of hurt a little bit, but I ride or die with Johnny Bananas, boy. And then
who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? Tell me. Who's the GOAT? CT or
CT?
Or
CT.
Okay,
See, dude, my favorite thing ever is when CT put Banana in the trash can.
Yeah, the Bananas backpack.
The Bananas backpack, the best thing in the history of the challenge. Yeah, that's the
history of TV. Forget the challenge. That might be the top TV moment of all time.
Oh, absolutely. And then the other one, I mean, Hunter was such a dick, man. Like how you said, how he didn't see that coming. Like I saw that coming, like bro, and I'm like, I wasn't even really. Everybody saw that coming, man. That's the one that's a clear one that for sure. The other one was kind of a little grimy, but it's Bananas. We give him a pass. He's 100 years old and still standing with the best of them.
It's true. He's the old man doing the flagship show and the Challenge
but
USA
CT,
instead of All Stars. Yeah, but
I'm convinced CT's a machine.
CT is one of the best athletes I've ever seen. I was one of my favorite moments of the last couple of years was when T.O. is acting like a diva and CT just yokes up to him and is like nobody's impressed by you. Like who do you think you are coming in here trying to do that? Like I was ready for that. I actually, funny enough, when Michelle Watterson was on the challenge, which is many years ago at this point. I forget what it was. I think it was like Celebrity or maybe they called that All Stars. Champs
that was a
Stars
charity
or
one,
something
wasn't it?
like that.
No, pros versus Pros
Pros
versus.
versus Stars, something like that. I don't even remember what it was called, but Michelle Waterson was on it. She didn't do particularly well. In fact, I believe she lost a cage match. Like, I think they actually had her in an elimination. That was a
She
cage
came
match
in
and
out of
she
shape
lost.
though.
Yeah, but I actually interviewed all of them. The cast of that show. I got to speak to CT. I got to speak to Bananas. I got to speak to Michelle and all these people. It never saw the light of day. I interviewed them for MMAfighting.com. I wasn't really a writer. I didn't want to do the transcribing, and I ended up pocketing those interviews. I still have them around here somewhere. But I straight up asked at the time, because obviously CT was famous for some of his brawls on the show and assaulting Adam and being an absolute wild person. I asked him, like, in another life, would you have been a fighter? And he was like, absolutely not. Not in a million years. I can't do what those guys do. I wouldn't have done it. I couldn't tell at the time if he was being humble, but now that I kind of see Fessy and others trying to get him into boxing fights and taking shots at him and him not going for the bait, I just feel like that dude, like, he didn't have that in him in that capacity to be a professional fighter. He just wanted to, like, scrap in the street, and I respect it. He's like a Kimbo Slice-esque character, but I love CT. That's my goat.
He's that beast you wish you didn't stir from his sleep once you piss him off, because that dude is a savage.
Bro,
My favorite
are you
thing was
guys
like he was
talking
like,
about that?
"Don't you disrespect it, man? Don't you do it."
Don't you act
My
like you
favorite
don't know
thing
what
was
this channel.
he was like 260, like had a wine gut and everything on one of those seasons before he got in shape again, and dude was still outrunning everybody, like out cardioing all
Didn't
these
he
dudes that
win?
are fit. What's that?
Yeah,
Didn't he win with the
Yeah,
gut?
he
Didn't
won
he
that
win
season
with the gut?
with what's her name? The girl we were just talking about, the one that Hunter was mean to.
Ashley.
Ashley, yeah, him and Ashley won that season together. Like, not together, but individually.
yeah, he won. Another challenge legend, Wes, just left the show, and that was his last hurrah. And he did an interview. I think, oh man, I forget the outlet it was with. Maybe Entertainment Weekly. I forget. But he basically said, like, CT was better than us when he was in shape. CT was better than us when he had a wine gut. Like, that dude is just unstoppable, and I put him up there as one of the greatest athletes of all time. You can have
Not even that. No, that
Tom
he's also
Brady.
probably sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, you can have Tom Brady, you can have Usain Bolt, you can have Michael Phelps, you can have anybody you want. See, I'm putting CT on the pantheon of best athletes ever.
Yeah.
And one of the best minds for the challenge too, because he's not only just a brute, he had the best. Like, he's smart as hell, good with puzzles and all that stuff too. He's just all around monster.
Yeah.
So for me, so I, before CT was the GOAT, before he just won you over, it was him and Diem, man. So, like, now when people are like, I'm new to the challenge, I always tell them to go watch the seasons that CT and Diem are in. I know it's rotten because at the end you'll be all heartbroken, but, like, if you don't know about CT and Diem, you don't understand the show, so just don't watch it. I don't know a better way to explain. They
That's
did
real
make
love right there.
they made Times top 100 TV couples of all time. CT.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me. That was some real ish right there.
Yeah, it was
one of the best love stories ever.
I rewatched that season once, just because I was going through all the seasons at one point, and man, it sucked rewatching it. I'm grown, I got kids, mortality.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is the worst. Like, it was so bad. Okay, so I know there's not everybody in here watches the challenge, and I'm only gonna try to keep you for a couple more minutes here. I think that Cole Zeman, he sat for a while on request. Cole, did you have something you wanted to ask Eric?
Yeah, I got a question for Rick. With every one of these cyborg victories that just kind of like happen in these last few years and will continue to happen, do you think your cyborg GOAT take just like continues to age well? And what do you say to the people who think you're a little crazy and who are on Team Nunes like myself?
Okay, so you're on Team Nunes. All right. Well, let's open it back up after I reply to this. So, I definitely think it helps age well, because what you've got with Cyborg is the longevity, right? Like, she started her career way before many of these other fighters who are in this conversation, and is kind of still going after, right? We've seen Amanda Nunes' entire career play out in just a fraction of the time that Cyborg's been around and kind of dominating the sport. I don't judge anybody who's got Nunes as GOAT. Like, completely makes a lot of sense. Like, achieved some things that nobody else has achieved, and was really dominant when she was in her prime. But if you look at the resume, like, man, she's got losses. And if we're just going to judge Cyborg off the one loss to Amanda Nunes, then what are we going to do with the losses that Amanda Nunes has early in her career? Like, that's going to be hard to justify. So if we're looking at like who at their peak was the absolute best, I think Amanda Nunes is in that conversation. It would be disrespectful to not have her in that conversation. But if my version of GOAT is you look at the entire body of work and not just wins over each other, right? Like, head-to-head wins matter. But I would have Jose Aldo above Conor McGregor in the featherweight GOAT conversation. And Conor McGregor has a win over Jose Aldo. So I think you have to look at the totality of the resumes. And, man, it's really hard to argue with Cyborg's resume from top to bottom and how many years she's been doing it and just absolutely, like, crushing people. But to your initial question, yeah, man, if she does this for 2-3 more years, like, who's going to be able to stack up? I think she's rivaling some of the men at this point in terms of what she's been able to accomplish and how long she's been doing it. If she gets a win over Kayla Harrison, or even like a Larissa Pacheco, I think it's kind of just like hay in the barn, like Cyborg's the queen of women's MMA.
I actually love the way you said that. That's my exact same take on it. Pretty much mostly. It's weird. Like, I agree with you on everything, and the things I don't, I'm dead fucking opposite. And I didn't write things down, but like I actually have it wrote down for a topic to hit later. Is Cyborg the female GOAT? Because when you say it that simple, Amanda Nunes is the best to ever do it. It's that simple. She is the best to ever do it. That does not make her the greatest of all time. It's not the same thing to me. So, like, I just piggyback and kind of say the same thing you said. Like, I 100% concur with that. Trace, what you got? What?
I just feel like it's an uphill battle if you're not in the UFC, because it's always going to be, well, they didn't fight UFC talent. She didn't fight UFC talent, because that is the measuring stick that we have nowadays. We are under the assumption, and for the most part, right, that UFC has the greatest talent in the world. I mean, one does have some solid, and there's some solid in the other organizations too, but for the most part, the UFC is the pinnacle. So it's always going to be the resume and where they've done it. That's going to be the issue for Cyborg, and I feel like that's why, even if Cyborg is the better fighter or the greatest woman fighter of all time, the resume is just always going to be a killer. And I know you said like she did have some good names, but a lot of that's early in her career. I feel like the outside of Nunes, there's never been like another just huge name that she's fought. At least off the top of my head, I might be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, and I think you're 100% right. Like, the uphill battle that anybody who's not in the UFC has to fight is real. Like, Johnny Eblen, I think, could be possibly the best middleweight on the planet right now, but I don't think anybody's going to give him credit for that, or we're not going to find out until he's facing people in the UFC and facing the names that people know. But I mean, if you look at, like, even right now, her last win is over Kat Zingano. Kat Zingano is a UFC veteran. Like, Leslie Smith's a UFC veteran. Felicia Spencer in the UFC, Holly Holm. Like, there's names here that just, like, these are the names that you're gonna get at 145, and she's fought them and she's beat them. The only one who she really couldn't overcome was Amanda Nunes. I wanted to see that fight desperately run back because I was interested to see. I don't think it was a fluke. I don't think it was a situation where I think, oh yeah, Cyborg's just gonna come in and steamroller and we're going to correct the record here. I thought that was just going to be a super, super competitive fight between probably the two best female fighters I've ever seen. And I really wanted to see it happen. I know Cyborg wanted it. I think Nunes wanted it a little bit less. I'm sad we never got it. But I think there's no wrong answer here. If you're looking at Amanda Nunes' resume and saying, like, she took out the top tier UFC talent when they were at their absolute best, yeah, there's an argument to be made. The way she dispatched opponents in her prime and including Cyborg makes a very compelling case.
Hey, Rick, real quick, man. Aside from who you think the greatest is, who are some of your favorite fighters? Not necessarily the best fighters, like they don't have to be champions. Just your favorite fighters, whether they're because they're entertaining, just because they're cool people, like whatever it may be. Like, who are your favorites?
Because they're Derek Lewis,
Yeah, Derek Lewis is definitely up there. It's not aged well. BJ Penn was my favorite fighter growing up, and the end of his career was sad. And then, the post career has also been a little bit off the rails.
Oh, we are one and the same on that one, man.
But yeah, BJ Penn was my guy. Like, he's the one who made me fall in love with the sport. Like, I got into it at the time where Pride was up and popping, and everybody loved Crow Cop and Fedor and Big Nog and all the Pride fighters and Rampage, and I loved them too. But the dude for me was always BJ Penn. Like, when I saw that dude fight and the things that he was doing at the time, like, he invented pound for MMA. Like, he was the guy who was willing to challenge himself at a higher weight class for the glory of what it was. And he kind of shaped that and created a mold for that within MMA, and he was my guy. Recent ones, I really like Aljamain Sterling. Again, this speaks to what I answered earlier about like guys who I like to have on the show who I don't feel like get a fair shake. I think Aljamain Sterling does not get a fair shake in terms of what he's been able to accomplish and his resume and how people judge him. I think they hold him to a different standard than they hold others. But that's neither here nor there. He's also a New York guy, so that has me a little bit biased. Truly, like, honestly, it's hard these days to have favorites because the product is on so much. Like, you really don't have. Shit, did I lose it?
No,
Yeah.
there you go.
Rick, you cut out, my man. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
can.
I think my AirPods died. I was just saying, there's so many fights. You really don't have time to digest it. You really don't have time to like kind of fall in love with people anymore and actually like, marinate in the wins and fall in love with people. The one who like has my most attention and has me looking right now is Hamzat. Like, I love that dude's style. I love his swagger. And he's the one who I think is like going to be the most disruptive and potential future champion. But yeah, like, I don't have a ton of like favorites these days. I kind of just like sit back, enjoy. I also kind of approach everything from a work perspective. Like, I watch fights every single weekend. And most of those weekends I'm working and thinking about like, how do I turn this into content? What posts do we make? What clips do we cut? And things like that. So it kind of removes me from a fan perspective. I'm a lot more of a fan, quote unquote, these days of like boxers. And Clarissa Shields is like top of the list. I absolutely love her. I absolutely love how game she was to try MMA. Like, she's an absolute beast, and she's really truly one of my favorite fighters. And I also like that she unapologetically talks shit and is confident and is cocky and doesn't care if anybody knows it. In a way that's kind of also still like humble, because she comes from humble beginnings. And then the usuals like Terrence Crawford. I've been a big fan of him. When I used to work at ESPN, we had Top Rank, and he was a Top Rank fighter. And I became a big fan and believer of Terrence Crawford in a way. Like, yeah, there's really like, I would say in terms of like fandom, I'm more of a boxing fan these days. And for MMA, it becomes like a work situation.
I completely understand that. All right, so I don't mean to cut it dry or anything, and if I'm not ushering you out or anything, but you've been here for I know you've been in this room for an hour flat now, and that's as much as I possibly asked for. So you're welcome to stay. We're not, I'm not throwing you out or anything, but if you've got to go or you have other commitments, brother, we completely understand.
Yeah, we got some kids to put to bed. You might have even heard them screaming in that last little bit. So I'm gonna hop out. It was awesome to talk to you guys. Let's do it again. I'm always happy to chop it up. And for anybody who came in and listened, thank you. Like, this is what this MMA community is about. So really good to talk to you guys.
Thank you a lot for coming in, Eric. I'll tune in again. You really are the voice of reason. I wasn't juicing you in the DMs. The interview wasn't at all about Ariel, but at the end, please make sure that Ariel knows some people miss Humble Hawani. We liked that guy a lot. He was a good person. We listened to him for years. We thought he was a cool guy. But all that aside, man, I was really glad to chop it up with you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, Eric. Thank you, man.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.